You're listening to the Shout Podcast, the official health and well-being podcast from the Firefighters Charity.
Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Shout Podcast, the official health and wellbeing podcast from the Firefighters Charity. I'm your host, Kim Robson, and if you listened to our first episode, you'll know that I've been supported by the charity in the past and done a few fundraising events as a way to give something back. The Shout Podcast is a fortnightly show that brings you a wealth of easily digestible health and wellbeing advice and information, all designed to help you live healthier and happier. We'll also give you an overview of the ways in which the Firefighters Charity can support you and speak to people involved in and supported by the charity. Coming up in this episode, we're going to be talking about relaxation. I catch up with Sally Walker, the charity's wellness and behaviour change coach, to find out why relaxation is so important and what it actually involves. As it's National Carers Week this week too, Tim Bainan tells the story of retired firefighter John McBrion, who cares for his wife Cathy on a full-time basis. Sophie Pearce, meanwhile, speaks to former RAF firefighter Mark Latham, who's embraced daily yoga and meditation to help him with his mental health. And later, in a new regular feature, we'll cram as many shout-outs as we possibly can into our Thank You Too. 2 minutes of thank yous. Don't forget, you can get involved in Shout Podcast by sharing your stories, telling us what you want to know, and sharing your good news. Just go to firefighters.charity.org.uk/Shout Podcast. Right then, on with the show. And first up, to mark the unsung heroes who work tirelessly to support their loved ones this National Carers Week, here's the incredible story of John and Cathy McBrion.
As the coronavirus has shown us all too clearly, none of us can take our health and well-being for granted. For those of us taken ill or facing periods of self-isolation, the past weeks and months have shown us just how much we rely on others to support us. Whether bringing us our food and supplies, supporting us with childcare, bringing us our medication, or simply being there to talk to, thousands of us have relied on temporary carers to care for us during this pandemic. However, around 6,000 people a year become carers on a more permanent basis, often as a result of unexpected injury or illness befalling someone they love. Each is a tale of personal sacrifice and devotion, as is the case for former Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service firefighter John McBrion and his wife, Cathy.
What being a carer means to me is providing everything now that Cathy needs. You know, it's a difficult job. No one can prepare you for it, no matter what age you are. And I've found it difficult. You know, I was ballpark 50 when it happened, and you know, I found it very difficult. So God knows what it's like for kids that are carers, you know, because there's carers of all ages throughout the country, isn't there? But personally for me, it's just about doing everything I can now for Cathy and keeping her happy.
John and Cathy's lives were turned upside down a few days before Christmas in 2015, when Cathy suffered a stroke while driving home from work. Her memories of the events from that day are understandably hazy.
I was leaving work early that day because I was due to go out on the work's Christmas party the next day. So I left work early, travelling home. I was going over a flyover. I just remember the feeling. I was drunk and the car was swerving. So I tried to phone John and I couldn't hold the phone. I couldn't drive and hold the phone because I'd lost the left side. I couldn't get the car any further, so all the roads were congested. And a girl come over to me and said, is everything okay? And I said, no, it's not. I feel funny. So she said, just hang on there. I'm just going to phone the police and an ambulance. So I said, well, I've got to go and get my hair done. So she said, no, you won't be able to go and get your hair done. You'll have to go into the ambulance. And that was the last I knew of the ship. All I can say is the girl that picked me up, she's my guardian angel now, because if I would have carried on the journey, I probably would have had a crash. So I'll always remember her as my guardian angel. Then I got took in the ambulance and that was it. That's the last I remember of it.
The weeks and months that followed were hard for the couple. Cathy spent 3 months in hospital, and John found himself getting increasingly stressed and angry at the lack of news as to Cathy's condition and by the clerical minefield he was having to navigate on her behalf. For someone who had spent his career helping others and working in high-pressure situations, this proved to be something that no amount of training or experience could have prepared him for, which, he explains, became increasingly frustrating.
And I had my workmates ringing me up, and saying, "Are you okay?" But part of their job was also to say, "Well, look, we've got to ring up and keep in touch with you as well. And is everything okay? Can we do anything? How's Cathy doing?" And I couldn't tell them nothing because Cathy wasn't getting any better. Cathy was still in that moment of just coming out of hospital. So every time somebody asked, "How's Cathy?" I couldn't say, "Well, yeah, things are worse, things are better," because they weren't. And I started to become frustrated with the questions because I couldn't tell them nothing. And it was the same question over and over with the same answer, to the point that in the end I said, "Look, don't ask me anymore. Leave me alone. I just want to shut the door." I spoke to a counsellor and he said, "The easiest way to explain it to you, John, is that if you imagine your brain or your head is like an email inbox, well, at the moment, you're full. All your emails are right to the top, and the slightest thing that comes in is setting you off. And you've got to learn to cope now with, dealing with these emails and letting some of them go."
After Cathy returned home, John had to balance his new responsibilities as her carer with his work. It was a life-changing challenge that took some getting used to.
Day-to-day life after the stroke was strange at first. Obviously, Cathy had the care coming in from the hospital. I think it was for 6 weeks. But once they went, it was just me and Cathy to a degree then. My lad had started work and it was just down to me and Cathy. The family was still doing a lot for us. They were doing some of the shopping and helping with the washing and all the rest of it. But it's just a huge adjustment to life, and you can't prepare for it.
Feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, and even anger are common for those facing life-changing circumstances, such as John and Cathy. Irene Ramsden, a caseworker with the Firefighters Charity's Welfare Services team, supported the McBrions as they adjusted to their new life together.
The main pressures and strains in caring for somebody at home, actually getting all that information can be a bit of a minefield, especially with the welfare benefits. It's knowing what you can apply for, what you're eligible for, and how to go about applying for it, what to put on the application forms in order to get what you actually need, and to actually get through the face-to-face assessment that they will have to do for both the employment support allowance and the personal independence payment.
Irene was able to help John and Cathy to do exactly that, and explained further just how significant the minefield can be for people in their situation.
My advice to anybody going through this sort of a situation would be to get as much advice from other professionals as possible, to know all possibilities of what could happen. Could they be medically retired, for example, or not? What happens with their pension? Can they afford to continue to live in the house that they're living in? Is it suitable? Does it need major adaptations, or do they have to move to somewhere more appropriate? There's just so many questions, and every case is an individual. You really need to sit down with them and find out what things are like at home, and then work out which would be the best way to tackle it.
As well as support from the charity's welfare services team, John and Cathy also access support at the charity's Jubilee House Centre in Cumbria, with Cathy taking part in a programme of activity supported by the nursing team at the centre.
Well, at first, when John told me, I was a bit in anticipation, because thought I'd be on my own, and I was sort of dreading it. And when I got there, it was just amazing. I'd lost a lot of confidence before going, because I'd gone from a full-time, quite high rolling work to coming back and living in a cocoon. So I lost confidence in talking, but through the nurses, because they're there all the time, and I had a fantastic experience.
And John took the opportunity to talk to one of the charity's psychological therapists and to take part in the organised relaxation sessions, with surprising consequences.
I'd go into this room every night. It was open to everyone. Everybody went in as part of the programme, but they let me in because I've been on the psych bit now, and they just closed the door, drew the curtains, and it was a darkened room, and they started playing like background mindfulness type music. And one of the girls was just talking over it, and she'd be like, right, what I want you to do now is just breathe in to the count of 3 and out to the count of 3. And it was so relaxing. It was amazing. All of a sudden, you hear people snoring, and you can't see them, but it's quite comical. After the room, literally that relaxed that they're falling asleep. And I caught myself going a couple of times, where your throat goes, and you wake yourself up. Anyway, I started doing that, and it really, really worked for me. And I'd come out, and where this room was in relation to where mine and Cathy's sort of bedroom was, it was a 30-second walk down the corridor. So I'd shoot down, I'd bang this BP monitor on, and you could see that I dropped about 10 or 15 points on the blood pressure monitor. So it was living proof, for the want of a term, that, the evidence was right there in front of your eyes. Before you walked in that room, your BP, for argument's sake, was 150 over 100. And after half an hour's breathing techniques and relaxation techniques, your BP was now 130 over 90 or 130 over 80. And you could physically see what that was doing for you. And it's something I've espoused to everybody since. When things are coming on top of it, just try and chill out, go and lie in the garden, concentrate on what you can hear around you. The water from your pond, if you've got a pond, the bird song, the wind rustling through the trees. Just close your eyes, suck it all in.
Today, John is retired from the fire service and is caring for Cathy on a full-time basis. He does so because of the unbreakable bond he shares with his wife. And Cathy, meanwhile, is in no doubt as to what her message would be to all the Johns in the world.
So thank you. You're a national treasure, and we couldn't work without you. And thank you very much for all the work you do.
So good to hear that John was able to benefit from some of the relaxation techniques he experienced at Jubilee House. And on that subject of relaxation, earlier this week, I spoke to wellness and behaviour change coach Sally Walker to find out what it's all about and how we should all be learning to relax. Life can be stressful at the best of times, but during a pandemic, when the rules are changing and there's so much uncertainty, it can be particularly stressful. And relaxing isn't always easy either. I'm joined today by Sally Walker, Wellness and Behaviour Change Coach for the Firefighters Charity. Sally, welcome. What's your advice to those of us feeling a little bit stressed right now?
First of all, be kind to yourself. That's my main message. It's really normal, although it's not very pleasant to feel stressed, especially at the moment with everything that's going on. And we don't like uncertainty. Humans just don't like uncertainty. And there's so much of that about at the moment, as you say. So I think cut yourself some slack and see if you can find time, however short it is. I really can't emphasize that enough. It doesn't matter if it's just a small amount of time, but for yourself to de-stress. And if you can do that every day, that's great. That would be the best thing if you can just start small and do something every day.
So how important is it that we actually do relax? I mean, what damage could we be doing to ourselves if we don't take that time?
That's a great question. It really is important to relax. It lowers your stress hormones. So things like cortisol, they naturally come down as we de-stress, and adrenaline. So if you get increased levels of stress and those stress hormones whizzing around the system, they can lead to all sorts of problems. So things like sleep issues, skin problems, a diminished immune system, and we really need to boost our immune systems if we can right now.
Relaxation is quite a difficult thing to define, I would say. What do you say should be happening in our bodies and minds when we relax?
Okay, I see relaxation, and I mean real true relaxation, as linked to sort of rest rather than activity. So when we actually take time out and we rest, lots of good things start to take place in our bodies and minds. So our heart rate drops, things like that. Our breathing rate naturally slows, or our muscles start to relax. Blood pressure lowers. And also our minds can start to settle a little if we let them. That's not always that easy, I know.
What you're defining there, that sounds exactly to me. That's exactly what I would think in my mind when I hear the word relax. But it is obviously a very personal thing. And for some, it might be that just chilling out, having a bath, something like that. But for others, it is actually being a little bit more active, maybe even going for a run. So does it matter what we do?
I think the simple answer to that is yes, actually, it does. If you're talking about running, so a 5-mile run or whatever, I would see that as an opportunity to start to unwind, but it's not actually relaxation, not true relaxation. That for me is linked more to sedentary pursuits. So I would think something more along the lines of resting, sitting and listening to music, maybe mindfulness practices, meditation, perhaps even sitting down and doing nothing for 5 minutes. There's a challenge. A lot of people find that really difficult. How often have you sat down and actually done nothing in recent times?
For some people, that relaxing comes with a bit of almost a side plate of guilt. You know, how can I sit back and watch the TV when I've got the washing to do, the ironing needs to be done? So how do we overcome that?
Oh, I don't think it's always easy. I think we often see downtime as selfish or that we're being a bit lazy. But actually, I'd probably say with that is if we don't take time out for ourselves, we're going to be less able to take care of other people and to get chores done effectively and that kind of thing. So my advice probably would be is to start small. If you're often on a guilt trip, that's probably the key message. So maybe allocate even 5 minutes to yourself to start with and see if you can extend that gradually over a period of time. I think once we begin to notice the benefits of time to ourselves and we do get in that real true relaxation experience, I think we naturally want to make a little bit more time for it. The other thing I'd say is that getting a bit creative can help. We might need to look at ways to find the right space and time to relax, especially at the moment in lockdown. So for some people, that might be going to bed a little bit earlier, maybe, and practicing some relaxation techniques. Or it might be waking up 10 minutes earlier, setting an alarm a little bit earlier and doing something in the morning before you get up. So I don't think it's necessarily easy. I think we have to learn how to relax.
But what about if we find the things we usually do to relax then aren't working?
That's obviously a worry if you've had a set sort of routine and you've normally found it helpful. But the best advice that I can give is to try something new. Even if you're not sure it'll work, I think when we experiment, that can really help. It's key when it comes to relaxation. And maybe get a bit curious and ask other people what they do to relax. That can also be helpful.
There's a bit of a fine line, I think, between, you've got the relaxing, that's working, then maybe it's starting to stop working. That could build up your stress levels a little bit. So at what point do we need to worry about the stress? Can it become dangerous?
Well, I think stress is more of a problem when it gets to the stage where it affects our ability to function in our day-to-day lives. I think that might be a warning indicator, really. I think it's always better to catch things earlier if you can, so you can reduce the impact of stress on your system. Because yes, we know stress can have a really negative effect on us. So we can offer lots of help and support at the charity. So I'd recommend giving us a call or having a look on the website. So that's the firefighterscharity.org.uk, and the helpline number is 0800 389 8820. Other things that are quite helpful, actually, Every Mind Matters is an NHS website, and that's full of really useful information. And you can even do little quizzes and questionnaires to assess your sleep, your stress levels. So that would be somewhere else that I think would be quite good. And then also we have got some relaxation videos on the charity's Twitter feed, Facebook page, and on the website. So that also might be helpful. But yes, just get in touch. Sometimes just talking things through as well with a valued sort of family member as well or friend can be really helpful.
Sally, it was so useful. Great information. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much.
Each week, fire and rescue services, firefighters and individuals across the UK do some incredible things in support of the charity, of each other and of their local communities. In a new feature, we thought we'd try and celebrate as many as we can in our Thank You To. 2 minutes to say thank you. So with one finger on the stopwatch, here we go. Thank you to firefighters at Hounslow Fire Station who took part in a treadmill relay for 7 days, 24 hours a day, raising over £10,000 for the firefighters charity and NHS charities. Congratulations to Blue Watch at Southsea Fire Station for completing their 5k ladder carry and raising over £800. And a shout out to the UK Fire Cadets who have branches across the UK taking part in a challenge for the charity. So far they've raised over £2,000. Alex and Paul from Wesley Fire Station flipped a 7-kilogram tyre for 10 kilometres. It took them over 7 hours and they raised over £2,000. The White Watch crew at Widnes Fire Station also completed their 26-mile challenge in full fire kit, raising a fantastic £980. Hats off to Craig Smith, who's raised £320 on his virtual treadmill climb. Alison Inslee from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service cycled 25 miles for 25 days and raised over £3,000. Gemma Larsden, meanwhile, baked homemade treats for her local villagers in Wolf Hill, Perthshire and raised over £1,000. And well done to Sarah Holden for completing her 24-hour run around Lancaster Fire Station. Sarah clocked up an incredible 75.9 miles and raised over £1,400. 2 North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service firefighters came to the rescue recently of a mother duck whose ducklings had fallen down a drain last week. All 6 ducklings were saved. And a round of applause has to go to crews from Keswick, Penrith and Workington fire stations who worked with other rescue agencies to save 3 canoeists who got into trouble in Derwent water. All 3 were brought back safely to shore. And finally, we have a big up to West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue, who came to the rescue of some tadpoles at a dried-up pond last week. They poured in 9,000 litres of water to replenish the pond and saved the soon-to-be frogs. Got a good news story you'd like us to share? Get in touch via the website and we'll squeeze it in next time. Okay, wow, that was fun. I need a breather. So here's Sophie Pearce from the marketing team who caught up with former RAF firefighter and current American Air Force firefighter Mark Latham to find out how the charity helped him to discover relaxation and mindfulness as a tool to help his mental health.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mark. First of all, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Mark Latham. I currently serve as a firefighter at RAF Crowton, working for the United States Air Force. I'm an ex-RAF firefighter, and I've used the services at Harkham House with the psychological team, and I think they're fantastic.
So tell me about the incidents that happened to you that led to you seeking support from the charity.
I had two incidents that happened in 2012 while I was serving in the Air Force. We had a major accident in one of the firefighting vehicles where we had a bad crash where I got injured and had some psychological trauma. And 3 months after that, we was deployed to Afghanistan, where there was another incident out there. And obviously the conditions and the psychological conditions are the things that we're seeing out there. It took its toll on me. So probably since about 2013, really, was when I noticed some psychological and physical trauma, which didn't really understand at the time.
What was your mental state like? You say you couldn't understand it. What was daily life like for you at that time?
I can remember going from being keen about life, my job, seeing the future optimistic, and overnight, literally going to a place where I felt really uncomfortable in myself, uncertain about the future, and it was like the colour of life had been taken away. And looking back now, it was from the traumatic incident of crashing the fire engine. But at the time, I wasn't aware that had such an impact or a significant impact on my mental health. I just wasn't aware at the time.
So you went down to Harkham House, our centre in Devon. What was that like?
Yes, I went down to Harkham House and I did a psychological rehabilitation week. It was absolutely fantastic, and it was what I needed at the right time as well when it came. I tried everything myself, self-help, and I still wasn't right. Then I got in touch with the charity off the recommendation that a firefighter at my previous base had used. And he said he'd used the psychological team down there. So I thought, well, I've got nothing left to lose. And I went down.
What did you learn about yourself and your own mental health while you were there?
The psychological team put together some seminars and some packages where they teach us about the physiological side of stress and anxiety. And then when we sit there as a class and you've got you've got people there from all walks of life and all parts of the fire service and people that partners in the fire service, you soon realise that you're not abnormal, and you soon realise that these same flags that come up, every person in the room had these same flags, same things coming up with the physiological side of it, and it makes you feel like if I wasn't in that setting with other people that are obviously going through similar sort of things, you'd still believe that it's a trait, but you think it's just you and you think you're abnormal. But when you're sitting there with a group of 15 people and they're all saying, yeah, I suffer from that, I've had that, it makes you feel a bit normal again, and it takes a lot of pressure off yourself.
And did you learn any tools or relaxation methods or anything while you were down there?
Yeah, the coping mechanisms, even explaining the stress side of things, it was a massive help, because that's what I was dealing with. It was just this build up of stress in me that I didn't know how to control, or it'd overwhelm me eventually because I wasn't using the best methods. And the coping mechanisms that they teach down there are fantastic. The same mechanisms won't work for everyone, but they introduce you to so many of these coping strategies that one of them does fit the bill. And then what I would say is when you find something that works, just keep practicing it over and over and over like a muscle memory. Make it your own and enjoy it. There was so many, the Tai Chi, we did some yoga, some breathing techniques, everything that deals with the physiological side of stress and that's in every human. So they are fantastic with what tools they give you to take home.
So what worked for you?
The breathing techniques were the ones that worked for me. And also learning that stress is in the body. Literally physiological stress. They explained that when we were hunter-gathering or before we were modern day humans, stress it's a natural good tool to use. It gets you out of situations, it makes you think quick, it can help you. But in a situation where this stress is unseen and this stress is now uncertainty and it's more psychological, you're still having the same physiological stress responses with adrenaline and cortisol, but there's nowhere for it to go. But then using the techniques that they teach you, the yoga, the Tai Chi, the breathing, it regulates your body back down to go, okay, there is a threat of stress, but here's how to deal with it in a physiological response. And it works because the science behind it works. We've all got a human body, and there is certain things that can happen that can reduce that stress.
Did you change your lifestyle as a result of going down to Harkham?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. I went because how the course is set up with the healthy eating, the motivation, the moving. That's the things that you sort of start neglecting when you're in a bit of a down place or a low place. And then when you go down there, it just reignites a bit of a flame inside you to then go home and start looking after yourself a bit more.
And do you still keep it up now?
Yes. Since then, I've been stretching every day, doing my yoga every day. I just feel the benefits. I know how much it works. And it's these things, it's these little things. I always think to people, you can't control the big things that's going to happen, but the little things you can control. So implementing your daily routine, these stretches or breathing or meditation.
Would you ever thought that you would be the sort of person that would do daily yoga, daily meditation, change your lifestyle so much? Did you ever think that you'd be that person?
Never. Before I had the incidents in 2012, my release was always quite heavy exercise, physical. I used to do martial arts, boxing. When you're a bit younger, you don't need, but when you come to a time of crisis, these methods of sitting down, breathing, yoga, meditation, that's what we should have all been learning when we were younger at school. Because you can have your physical health taken away, you can have your job taken away, you can have emotional, psychological stress at any point in your life. And if you have these skills of sitting back from your thoughts and emotions and just watching them, that's the way forward in times where you need to take a bit of a break and being kind to yourself.
Has it helped you cope with things thrown up by the virus or the uncertainties that's going on at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. I think when the virus, all the hysteria with the virus came in, I could feel it, I could see it. It can quickly overwhelm people when things happen outside of your control. And because what I've been through and what I've learned using these methods and skills, I can step back now, and what normally would have possibly overwhelmed me doesn't overwhelm me anymore. I'm still aware of it. You still get the little feelings of this collective anxiety that we're all going through.
Have you always been someone that was comfortable talking about your own mental health, or is that something that you've learned as well?
I've learned to talk about mental health. With the culture that was in the fire service, in the armed forces, you never would feel comfortable talking about mental health. It was just one of them stigmatised. It wasn't stigmatised in a bad way, but you never felt comfortable talking to people about it. And I can remember in 2013 when I went to seek some psychological support because I knew I wasn't right. When I come back from Afghanistan, I didn't want to speak to anyone. And that was even like trained people. And I don't know what that was. I don't know if that's your ego or if it's something in your head that's saying, actually, you'll be all right. It's just a phase. And what I've learned is it's not a phase. You have to talk about it. It doesn't go away unless you start getting help and talking about it. It never goes away.
And why do you think it's so important that we talk about mental health, especially with your experience in the armed forces?
With being in the armed forces, I think there's a lot of pressure. An incredible amount of pressure put on you. It's not just your work life. Basically, you're owned by the military, so you don't really get your own space and your own time. You can't just go home when you want. You can't escape it. So it's like you're in a pressure cooker, really. And especially if you come into your end of your serving your time in the forces, where you've got uncertainty about jobs and prospects when you come out, it can break you psychologically. Your body's only got a certain amount of tolerance to these stresses, and then if it goes unnoticed and you don't address it, it'll catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you at some point. So it's so important to get that psychological support or even talking about mental health.
Mark, thank you so much for your time and for being so open about everything. I think a lot of what you said will resonate with people. So thank you. And thank you for being an ambassador for talking about mental health and the support that you receive from the charity as well. That's
okay. Thank you for all your support and thank you for the services that you give to us, because it really, really is. It's so special and it's such a required thing at this upcoming times. So thank you for all your help and your team's help. Yeah, it's a fantastic charity.
So that's it for episode 2. Thanks for listening. Please remember to tell your friends and colleagues to listen, subscribe and review. All the information needed is on the website at firefighters.org.uk/shout podcast. We'll have much more for you in the next episode in a fortnight's time. Until then, take care and stay safe. The Firefighters charity relies on its individual donors to meet the £10 million cost of operating its services in support of the UK's 55,000 fire and rescue service employees and countless thousands of others across the wider fire community. It receives no government funding and is facing a fundraising shortfall during the pandemic that equates to around £200,000 a month. The charity needs you, so if you can help, please donate today. Find out more at firefighterscharity.org.uk/donate. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Shout podcast. For more information on the show and how the Firefighters charity could support you, check out www.firefighterscharity.org.uk.
If you liked Shout podcast, you're going to love My Firefighters Charity, the new social media wellbeing and fundraising app for the fire services community. Packed with great wellbeing content from the expert teams at the Firefighters Charity, you can connect with others, join groups, collaborate and have fun with your fire family friends across the UK. And you can get the advice and help you're after from the Firefighters Charity whenever you need it. Head to your app store, search for My Firefighters Charity and register for free today.